If I first. Hello.
Hello, hello, Edwina. How are you? I am with Ward 6 candidates tonight, and I have Edwina Butler, Lauren Richter, and Alan Rogers. And we're going to kick it right off. Edwina, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Give us an opening statement.
Yes, I'm Edwina Butler Wolfe, and I'm live here in Ward 6. Live here since 30 years. My house I bought brand new, and I've been raised and born in Shawnee, Oklahoma. Grew up in northeast of Shawnee. Attended North Rock Creek School as elementary, high school as Dale High School, and I went on to pursue college courses at Oklahoma Baptist University and St. Gregory's University. And I am a member of the absentee Shawnee tribe, and I was the former governor of the absentee Shawnee tribe back in 2013 through 2020. And my leadership role was there. And in my past, I've worked at the public school system at North Rock Creek School for 15 years as a teaching assistant, and then I moved into a coordinator for a Indian education program. So I worked there for 15 years, coached basketball, girls sports, and then I worked at Tinker Air Force Base for about 4 years, and then went on to work at the school system, and then stayed there for 15, just like I had mentioned. And like I said, I grew up northeast of Shawnee. I'm the eighth youngest of eight girls,
Mhm.
and all my sisters live here in Shawnee, around Shawnee area. And my leadership role is always been the public school state system or the federal government. So all
Okay.
my years and served on many boards as a selected from DC federal agents in DC for the transportation. So I had a lot of dealings with the self governance new ruling of transportation, and I've served on school boards like the Johnson O'Malley programs, the
Mhm.
Indian Education. Um, Currently, I'm serving on a state board at the state office as a member to the Oklahoma Advisory Council of Indian Education, and I've worked. I mean, I've served in many organizations through the Indian country. So I've learned a lot of government fields and all the operations in the federal government, and always dealt with local and the state government as well.
A lot of experience there, Edwina. Love it. Thank you very much. And next, I'm going to call upon Lauren Richter to give us a little bit of a bio. And let's try to keep these, a minute, 2 minutes long, and we'll move on.
Okay, thank you. My name is Lauren Richter. I was born in Shawnee, Oklahoma. My parents were out of state, born and raised, and they called Shawnee their home after they got married. Um, I am the youngest, or I'm the oldest of two, actually. It's just me and my younger sister. I went to school at Liberty for a time. I graduated middle school at Grove. I went to Shawnee High School and graduated there in 2007. I attended classes at OBU right after that, but I took some time off to save some money and kind of find direction in what I wanted to study after the first initial core classes, and finally graduated from there in 2014 with my bachelor's in education. Um, my husband went to OBU as well. We've been married for 5 years this fall, and we have two kids. Corey is my 3-year-old, soon to be 3-year-old son, and Lucas is my soon to be 1-year-old daughter. I just finished my 7th year of teaching. I've taught for North Rock Creek. I taught a year at Shawnee. I've taught at Epic. And recently I have taught at Wellston outside of town. And we moved back 2.5 years ago, beginning of 2020. We had originally moved out of town, out of state actually, in 2019 because my son was really sick and we needed a job change that could afford us to be at home, or at least me be at home and my husband could work. And we moved to Texas for about 7 months, and we moved back January of 2020. And then we've lived at the place that we've lived now since then in Ward 6. We rent in the ward, and I've enjoyed living on this side of town. Actually, I made a mental note because for most of my life I've lived in this ward. There's only been 2 or 3 addresses in my entire lifetime that have been in a different ward. I had to look at the lines to be sure, but I've lived in Ward 6 most of the time.
Thank you.
Experience wise, I'm out of time. All right, that'll work.
You can rattle off a few of your experience. Go ahead.
So I've volunteered for different nonprofits. I stopped for a little bit so that I could raise a family and focus on that. Experience wise, I've taught, I've done food service, I've done reception, clerical work. I'm still getting my feet wet on experience compared to Edwina as far as education goes, but I do have plans in my future to work into administrative roles or higher education roles, maybe at the state level one day. I have a master's in educational leadership that I'd like to be able to maximize use out of. So what I lack in experience, and I make up for in maybe charisma
and tenacity.
And tenacity, yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Lauren. And that's going to bring us to Alan Rogers. Alan, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Alan Rogers. I was born here in Shawnee at the old Shawnee Hospital. My mother raised us all, 4 of our children, her 4 children, basically by herself. My dad was a long haul truck driver, and was barely ever home. She worked 2 jobs to make the ends meet. Because my father, when he brought money in, he took as much money out as he brought in. So there was really no income from there. She attended all our baseball games, softball games. So I've learned my priorities from her. Family comes first, and we take care of each other. So I think that one of the things that qualifies me to be the candidate here is that we all share the same vision. We want something better for Shawnee. We think that Shawnee is a great place to live. Background for me, I graduated from Gordon Cooper Votech in 1987 as an LPN. I worked a couple of jobs within the city of Shawnee, doing some various nursing home work, and then moved off to Oklahoma City VA, where I spent 22.5 years as a licensed practical nurse. While there, I served as a union steward, then I became the union president. Once I stepped down from those 2 roles, I got elected to take a leadership class where I graduated in 2014 from the Oklahoma City VA and National Eval, which stands for Emerging VA Leaders. During those processes, we learned various leadership skills such as talking, listening, which is the very most important part of the aspect, and doing other things that helped with us. I left there and went to work for LifeShare of Oklahoma as a procurement technician for about 6 months. We didn't do the live harvest donors. We did the cadaver retrievals, they called them bone harvesters. After that process there, I got promoted into an office managerial position. They saw the leadership skills that I had, and they decided to put me into that role. Got headhunted by another company called ATSF, which stands for American Tissue Service Foundation. They were located in Edmond. I went to work for them for about 1.5 years. When my mother got sick, I was able to take time off from work and spend about 9 months taking care of her. My mother lived with us at that time. She had some serious complications that happened, and my nursing background helped me with taking care of her. Good. During this whole time frame, I was a Boy Scout leader. I started Troop 408, restarted basically. We started with 5 boys, and now it is the largest Boy Scout troop in Canadian Valley. They have more Eagle Scouts in that troop right now than they've had in any other time frame. I think they've graduated maybe 6 or 7 in one district. That's a lot. And I think, Daniel, you know a little bit about the troop history too.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
and during that time frame, I went to what was called Wood Badge, which is adult leader training, and it teaches you how to be an effective adult leader with your programs. And I did that for about 6 to 8 years.
Okay.
I am currently active within the St. Benedict's Catholic Church. I served as the Eucharistic minister at one time.
Okay.
Served with the youth group. Worked with youth group. Had to do their training for adult protective or child protective services and that, stuff like that. Currently,
Okay.
I'm at Gregory's Abbey, working as the healthcare director. I'm in charge of the healthcare staff and oversee the health of 18 to 19 monks, depending on and guests that we have coming in.
All right. It sounds like a full schedule for
It is.
everyone. In the in consideration of the time, we'd like you to keep your answers kind of succinct as we work through these questions. We've got questions relating to major topics, I believe: downtown, transportation, housing, city revenues, infrastructure, challenges, and opportunities. In the end, if you have any questions or comments about an answer that an opponent gives, please hold those reservations until the end. There will be a time that I'll ask about that, and we can discuss those if we need to, and then we'll go into closing. So thank you all, first of all, very much for being here and for having the guts to step into the ring to run for office. So starting with downtown, and I'm going to ask first Lauren this question, and we'll try to rotate our order. We recently lost a wonderful, visible, energetic, high retail dollar investor in our Main Street district because of requirements imposed when he tried to make facade improvements to his already well-improved downtown property. Unfortunately, this has been a repeated occurrence I've witnessed as a longtime Shawnee resident. Are you, as a commissioner, serious about getting our Main Street corridor thriving again? You can answer that, yes or no. And if it's yes, what is your commitment to the voters in making downtown a thriving district? Lauren Richter.
To start, answer's yes. I think whether I'm elected or not, that's something that I have the time now to dedicate towards revitalizing and bringing attraction back to the Main Street district. It wouldn't take just me becoming a commissioner to work towards a goal like that. I have the time available to do it now as my kids have gotten a little bit older. Some of the things I think I could do as a commissioner specifically would be able to work with the city staff, try to find every development grant that I can. I could work with the staff or advocate for modifying codes so that it's easier, so that people who go through the process don't run into obstacles or just flat out roadblocks that keep them from putting their businesses into the downtown area. Just working towards making it easier to bring business down to the city and keep it there. Mostly advocate for code updating. My first goal, if elected, would be to work towards a working relationship with the city manager and all the staff there. Not just for the Main Street district, but for all of Shawnee, with the focus on this question being the Main Street district.
Very good. Thank you very much. Next, I'm going to go to Alan. And Alan, I will repeat that question. Are you serious as a commissioner about getting our Main Street corridor thriving again? Yes or no? And if it's yes, what is your commitment to the voters in making downtown a thriving district? Alan Rogers.
Yeah, I'm definitely for it. I think that I don't think you're going to find anybody that's running for any of the office when you ask the same question that they're going to be against it. I think that downtown is a beautiful place. We have a lot of potential with growth. We need to be looking at how we are coding these buildings. If they're historical buildings, then they fall under different codes. But I think that if a code exists to make it look like a certain district that they're trying to portray, like the depot district that has been thrown around before, or the TIF district that's been thrown around before, we need to be looking at that, kind of keep those buildings in the same facade if that's what we're trying to do as a city. But as a business, I think the business, as long as it's not historically designated as a historical building, if it falls under city code, then they should be able to do what they wish to do with the facade in interior, as long as it meets city code. I think the unified code system needs to be updated where that we can actually look at having that as part of the process. It's easier to say, "Oh, I'm going to work with this and do that," but it's really how the system is set up right now that probably needs to be tweaked. There's issues with it, but that's not always bad because you have to have codes. If you didn't have codes, you'd have shanties everywhere. So that's
Yes, very good. And we are, as I understand, working on unified codes right now, as you mentioned. And I think that's a step in the right direction as well. Edwina, let me ask you the question. Are you, as a commissioner, serious about getting our Main Street corridor thriving again? Yes or no? And if yes, what is your commitment to the voters in making downtown a thriving district? Edwina Butler
Yes,
Wolfe.
most certainly I'm serious about revitalizing the downtown as like everyone has said, the codes, and also throwing in some communications, with the businesses down there, and to let them run their business and also stay within the codes of what is before them, but also listening to what works and what not. So I drove down through town, and I could see a lot of ideas that I have of making it a better, thriving place for family, for youth, for all ages, and all, not only ages but cultural. Shawnee is a very rich town of cultural, different ethnic groups, and so I'd like to see more of a um, open communication with cultural people educating. I like to educate our citizens in Shawnee of who is your neighbor and who is here in town. And then, like I say, the codes are needs to be updated, and I like to see more, uh, facial looks, of different cultural, and maybe put up more colorful benches and more bicycle racks, and more, I guess maybe free um, free events that goes on downtown to make it to more people would go, and then have more businesses and restaurants of different cultures. So I'm looking at more of a cultural atmosphere, and an open dialogue with people, and educating our citizens of who their neighbor is.
Okay, that sounds great. Now you mentioned bike racks, which is interesting. That moves into the next question. I would like you to address the transportation issue our community faces. Without a vehicle, Shawnee is a very tough space to navigate for steady employment, for healthy, inexpensive family activities, and families whose children would benefit from walking or riding their bikes to school, whether it be elementary, middle school, high school, or college. Discuss your knowledge of our community's transportation challenges, and please give a full description of your commitment level in making transportation without a motorized vehicle easier to navigate for employment, education, and healthy enjoyment. And Alan, that's going to go to you first. Alan Rogers.
Yeah, Daniel, that's a good question. I was approached about this when the Broadway project was first came out. One of the things that came up was that everybody was saying the city did their survey, wanted to see what the people of Broadway wanted. And they came up overwhelmingly, oh, yeah, they want it. They're in for the bike lanes and stuff. And then when it actually came time for people to start talking about it, it came out that the people of Broadway didn't want that. They were more worried about losing their parking space. So I think that it's really a multi-tier question. The first thing that has to happen is that we have to have true community involvement, trying to find out what the citizens of Shawnee want. we've got plenty of roads that run north and south, east and west that are not major thoroughfares for cars. We have several one-way streets in Shawnee that could be easily converted into a bike lane. We can use different avenues that does not take away other people's ability to use space in front of their house. Just the other day when I was coming down Independence, the new sidewalk that they just built, one of the biggest problems I see that already is that all the trash cans are lined up on trash can day. That makes it a little bit more difficult for people to use that sidewalk because they have to navigate in and around those trash cans. And then once central disposal puts the trash cans back, they're not in a uniform place. They may be halfway in the middle of the driveway or at the other end of the walkway or whatever. So I think that community involvement, like we had with the downtown depot, where they actually came up with proposals, they had people come and speak and listen to see what's going on and what the plans are. But I think that we do need something that helps the community that doesn't have cars. The transportation issue is huge. I think that you have to have a vehicle in Shawnee. We have over 500 and something miles of roads in Shawnee, and we probably have less than a third of that in sidewalks. The sidewalks that we do have that are new are great, but we also have a ton of old sidewalks that need to be repaired. One of the constituents I talked to, they said the city told her that she is responsible for her sidewalk that's in front of her house. And if that's true, what's going to happen when we put all these new sidewalks in for these people that are walking up and down the street and they become in disrepair? Is the homeowner going to be responsible for that property, or is it the city who put it in? So that's, some of the questions I would have.
That sounds good. Next up is going to be Edwina. And Edwina, the question: discuss your knowledge of our community's transportation challenges, and please give a full description of your commitment level in making transportation without a motorized vehicle easier to navigate for employment, education, and healthy enjoyment. Edwina Butler Wolfe.
Yes, the most, having a car is one thing, but not everybody in Shawnee has and can afford cars, especially with these gas prices nowadays. But I think that with the not having a car and relying on walking or bikes is I like to see maybe transporting people, having different stops available for our citizens, like shuttle buses or maybe just having more access to of maybe having the transportation brought, having them going to different um, areas of grocery shopping or to the doctor's office, and the sidewalks look good again too, but um, we got to think about handicap. We have our handicapped citizens here in Shawnee too. We always don't want to exclude their transportation of them not having a vehicle, and I see quite a few that's on motorized um, um, wheelchairs that do travel up and down our streets. Those new sidewalks is much of a hazard because it's so close to the street there on Independence, and like I say and see that some of the sidewalks are really needing repairs. Most states that I've gone to out east, they do have bicycle lanes, and it seems like that works out there, and just making it available for transportation and for the people here in town, and making public transportation. So it's good to see, and share rides. Maybe people could help share rides and set incentives for companies to provide jobs that allow our citizens to um, to take those options up. And I'm sure rides, maybe the people could help share rides and certain incentives and for companies to provide jobs and allow citizens to have to take. So
Good.
there's all options to do and to really sit down and think about it, and there's many options to look at.
Yes, that's a bunch. That's a bunch of good ideas. Thank you very much. And Lauren Richter, discuss your knowledge of our community's transportation challenges, and please give a full description of your commitment level in making transportation without a motorized vehicle easier to navigate for employment, education, and healthy enjoyment. Lauren Richter.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm gonna probably end up saying a lot of what Alan and Edwina said, but it's because I agree with a lot of what they said too. From my knowledge, what I've noticed is that services for citizens in Shawnee are mostly up north of town, like shopping, grocery, doctors, hospital types. It's unless you live close by that you could walk with or without a sidewalk, it's hard to get to those if you don't have a vehicle. And so I'd be willing to and up for looking at a busing type transportation service that the city could provide. I think we're big enough, even though, you know, we're a small city, I think we're big enough that we could utilize a bus service for people to be able to get to the grocery store, to their doctor's appointments, to their jobs. One thing I've noticed is that, you know, one of the main questions on a job application is, do you have reliable transportation? And not everyone can say yes to that question in Shawnee without a vehicle. But if they had a busing system to utilize, then more people could answer yes to that question. I enjoy watching the sidewalks go up. I live in an area where the sidewalks have been established for a long time and they're in good condition. And for my lifestyle with my family, we walk to and from everywhere around the parks and the St. Greg's area, and it's safe for us. They're well lit. They're far enough away from the road, and we take advantage of those to a high degree. And it's nice to see those different sidewalks going in other parts of town. At some point here soon, if they continue to work on the MacArthur sidewalks, my family and I could very well go west to east and back the entire length of Shawnee because of the Bryan Trail and then like the airport trails that I'm nearby. I think it's good to have the sidewalks, the biking lanes. I do remember and that was right around when I was moving back into town, the Broadway biking lanes up for debate and seeing the signs along the road. I don't want people to lose their parking spaces on the account of bike lanes being in the road. But I think there's a way that we can all, like, kind of like what Alan said, we can maybe have a planning scheduled where we could, as a community, come together, because we all live in different parts of the town. And so our roads are different, our sidewalks are different, and what may work for one area of town or one road from town may not work for the rest. And us coming together would be the best way to do it. We all have great ideas. We just need to all come together.
That sounds good. Sounds great. Now we're going to move on to housing. According to the 2020 census, our community sits around 54% home ownership. The national average is 62%. That represents about 1,000 home gap that we would need to fill with new homeowners who are existing renters, leasers, etc., just to become average in our home ownership ratio. Rent pricing in our community is through the roof in terms of value return for costs. People are renting in horrendous conditions. Generally speaking, what do you think is the mental differences between a homeowner family dynamic as compared to a family which rents its home? And how does home ownership rates affect a community? And we will start with Edwina Butler Wolfe, please.
Okay. Well, I could see that the homeowners on their mental dynamics with their family is also would be the comfort and the stability of owning their ownership of their home. You know, where they're not renting their houses. So the mental state would be for the children to be comfortable and education wise and job wise, to be
Sure.
able to get their ownership, and then whenever they're homeowners, then that comes into the revenue of paying taxes and the jobs that and to keep that rate, to have that rate go increase, you have stability jobs and good jobs for good housing, and then we need to keep our citizens in their homes for ownership and to educate our young youth that
Mhm.
how important it is to have their ownership homes and to be a productive citizen within their city to bring in revenue. And whenever they bring in revenue to the city, then that's only will bring up the economic of our city and to
Okay.
be able to do more where we won't have to worry about funding our firemen, our police officers, and it's the safety, public safety, and it's really concerning, because the way our economic economy's going in a direction, everybody's pinching back and saving this and that, and so I think that with the ownership versus the owns a home. We need to be and help our neighbors of being that able to keep their homes and up to codes. So
Okay.
everybody helps everybody in our city.
That sounds good. So we'll move to Lauren. Generally speaking, what do you think is the mental differences between a homeowner family dynamic as compared to a family which rents its home? How does homeownership rates affect a community? Lauren Richter.
Yeah, thank you. I think homeownership rates do affect the community on a personal level. When my husband and I were looking to move our family back after our time in Texas, we struggled to find housing that we liked that was affordable. In my experience as an adult in Shawnee, I have tried multiple times to purchase a home through bank lending and was told that my capacity for my income wasn't able to hold a $900 a month mortgage payment, but here I sit in my front porch of somewhere that I rent for $1,250 a month, and I've done that for the last 2.5 years. For people, I think, and this is a presumption, in my generation, it's harder for some of us to purchase a home easily. We would have to have gifted money or come into money, have a job that provides much more money than what teachers make to purchase a home and convince the bank that we can afford it, even though we can on paper with our renting. Homeownership, to me personally, I like the idea of renting because I have comfort in knowing that when things are broken, that they're fixed quickly, and it's not something that I have to divulge all of my savings to fix. For demographically in Shawnee, I would look to see what the ages are of people who are wanting to come into Shawnee and who are wanting to stay, because on the census data that I looked at, I think it was about 80% of the housing units in Shawnee are single family units. And I don't know Shawnee's trajectory, but for my age group and just, my cohort of nuclear families and young families, it's nice to have options of whether I want to rent or whether I want to own, whether I want a single family home with a front yard and backyard, or if I want to live in a bubble community type, like a duplex or a multi-unit type of housing option. I think that the vast majority of housing being solely homeownership minded, it could potentially deter people from Shawnee. It was, like I said, really hard for my husband and I to find housing in Shawnee when we were moving back. We already had the jobs. We were trying to move back to Shawnee, and it was easier to rent than it was to own, even though it was more costly to us to rent. But like I said, it's convenient to know that if my AC goes out, I make a call and someone comes and takes care of it, and I'm not out thousands of dollars to fix it, and I can keep my money in my bank accounts. So I think Shawnee needs more different types of housing options than just single family units that are pretty high in rent from what I've known. and research, just looking for places to live.
Okay, that's good. Thank you very much for the personal insights too. Alan, generally speaking, what do you think is the mental differences between a home owner family dynamic as compared to a family which rents its home? How does home ownership rates affect the community? Alan Rogers.
Well, speaking from my own experience, me and my wife bought our house 25, 26 years ago. Very fortunate to live in a cul-de-sac in Ward 6. We've raised our children here, and our grandkids have spent quite a few years in our house with us. One of the things that drives the mentality, I think, is that just like Lauren said, if something breaks, somebody can come and fix it. But the downside to that is that she is paying somebody else's mortgage and their insurance to fix that problem. Uh, the stability of the housing market, when we're set on our rate for how much we're going to pay a year for our mortgage, that is set. We might get a small percentage increase depending on our pay history and whatever, but when a renter signs the contract for 1 year or 2 years or whatever their lease is, it doesn't mitigate the homeowner, the property manager, from coming in next year and say, well, you were able to pay $1,200 a month, so we're going to go up to $1,500 a month. And if you don't like that, we have people that are willing to come in. Also, just from my experience in my neighborhood, when I first moved here, we only had one rent house in our neighborhood, on our street, to qualify that. Now I've got 6, and of those 6 yards are the worst upkept. And I can't say right now mine is the best upkeep because of the rain that we just had, and prior to that. But now, I'm the one that has to do all that. We bite the bullet. We pay for new air conditioning, central heat and air, new windows, new roof, the insulation, the plumbing, the upgrade, the remodels and stuff like that. But the benefit for that is that we know how to budget our life with the improvements that we have. So okay. I don't think that's a big problem. I think the mentality is that when you have a property that's not yours, it's less likely to be taken care of. Look at the rental cars at the airport. How many people would love to buy one of those rental cars after they see them flying down the street?
Yeah, true. Okay. So let's move on to infrastructure. We have infrastructure issues in our community. According to your own study, what are the 2 most pressing infrastructure problems the city faces? What is the current staff action plan which addresses each problem, and how is it being paid for? Is the ongoing solution going to be effective? Why or why not? If not, offer your plan for a different infrastructure solution. Generally, how much it would cost, and where the money to pay for it would come from. And that question is going to first go to Lauren Richter.
Thank you. I've got a timer on my desk here so that I can make sure I keep it under time. So I think the 2 biggest infrastructure issues that I have seen on social media and felt a little bit in my area, the first one would be the water and sewer lines. Mm-hmm. If I remember correctly, most of February, as far as my school district, we were out of school for snow days and ice days. And so I remember February specifically being really heavy on freezing conditions. And I looked it up, and there were about 40 something water main breaks in just February alone. And that's previous years, that equates to about half of the amount of breaks in a year-long period. Historically, I think a lot of our water and sewer lines are 80 plus years old. And I think the cold weather exposed the weakness that we have in our water and sewage lines. Some of the things that I've learned in the last couple of weeks is a city manager and I had a meeting, and she told me that some of the ARPA money to the tune of like $8 million was going to go towards water and sewer projects. I think part of that would hopefully be burying them deeper so that the temperatures don't affect it as quickly or at all. I think streets is, because I'm looking at my time, I think streets is another infrastructure issue. Alan had mentioned it during one of his time slots. There's something around 500 miles of roads in Shawnee, lots of potholes and opportunities for potholes. And as Shawnee grows, I think we're going to need upkeep on those roads and maintain them, because I think it costs, well, I know it costs more to fix something that's in dire need than to maintain it. But as our city grows, we also need to look at new roads or widening roads. I know that there are projects like that are in whatever phase that they're in, like 45th Street. I think they're in phase 1 still. Ways to fix that as quickly as I can. I think besides finding the revenue, the ongoing revenue for it, or the earmarking for it, I am all about finding grants. In education, it's finding the free money, just meeting criteria and eligibility. So finding grants to close the funding gaps that we have. I know from a few articles that more infrastructure money is coming out of Washington than it has in recent years. That floats through the state, I believe. And then it would be the city and maybe someone lobbying for money from the state to get our share and get what we need to make our infrastructure, our roads, specifically in this case, a lot better.
Okay.
And then I think I've run out of time. I've got way more, of course.
Okay, Alan Rogers, you're up next. According to your own study, what are the 2 most pressing infrastructure problems the city faces? What's being done to handle it now? Do you think that's going to work? And if not, what would be your plan to fix those infrastructure problems?
Well, I think Lauren's right on the button on most of that. I think that the water sewer lines right now are our biggest pressing issue. That goes along with the city water plant, the purification plant. We don't have a backup at this point. Last year during the snowstorm, as Lauren had brought up, that we ran out of our chlorine that could chlorinate our water, so we couldn't drink because they couldn't get it shipped in or something. I can't remember the exact reason they gave. But what happens if one of the pumps break at the plant that's out by Johnson? We're really in a world of hurt. We need to be looking at our backup systems there. That we need to have a backup. There should be a backup. The other thing I think that's one of our most important infrastructure is our first responders. I've never seen a first responder run across town on a sidewalk, responding to a fire, or a car crash, or a burglary. They're always driving, so that it ties in with the roads. But I really think that our first responders, we need to have the most well-equipped, best benefits, best paid to keep the best people here. It's not that hard to figure out that is a huge benefit to us. There are some communities that have done away with their police departments and rely on the county, but that's not the case that we can do that. We're too big of a municipality to say, oh, we don't want a police department. We have to fund them. We have to fund our fire departments. We have to keep them fully staffed and even have extra staff, because officers get hurt in the line of duty. Firefighters get hurt in the line of duty. There should never be a reason that a office is closed that provides life-saving or protection to the people. As for funding, there's always, like Lauren said, there's grant money out there. We've got the city employs grant writers. We've received one from Michael Bloomberg just recently. The question that I always have with grant money is, what strings are attached to it? What does the city have to do to get that grant money? And what does that do for any other city commission that comes in 2 or 3 years later that has to deal with those strings that may not be palatable at the time when they come into office? So we could look at quarter-cent sales tax on hotels. We've done that before. We can make it a permanent quarter penny sales tax on cigarettes, fuel, whatever. Something that needs to be meaningful for our first responders and our the infrastructure lines, water lines, and sewer lines. Those are out. They need to be brought up to date.
Okay, that sounds good. And Alan, if you would, please don't play with your keyboard or hit on your desk. That's okay. That's all right.
I hit my mouse a couple of times.
It's part of the environment.
Yes.
Edwina, we're going to come to you. According to your study, what are the 2 most pressing infrastructure problems the city faces? What are the plans that are happening now to try to get that fixed? And do you agree with them that they will be successful? And if not, what would you do differently? Edwina Butler Wolfe.
Well, of course, the water lines. I think we were all on the same target as mentioning the water lines, the wastewater, and I want to go as far further as saying the streets, to the structure of streets and the roads here within the town, and also, the electric, the electric poles. There's a lot of poles here in town that needs to be looked at. Some are leaning and just doing a lot of repairs of getting ready for the weather. I didn't like having to. I know it was the grid part when the bad weather came through, and then we had to be out of electric. And I like to see more of having more infrastructure of what to do and helping our elders and our people here and citizens, our citizens here in Shawnee, to be able to report things around their neighborhood of what goes on in the streets and also what would probably fall under too. Always want to say something a little different, and that's the affordable housing. The housing is an infrastructure. I know we talked about that already, but we that is something that needs to be looked at, and I don't want to just keep repeating what has already been said, but I think the point is across that we all feel strongly that the water and sewage department finding ways and infrastructure and to help to gain funding and stuff. And that's another thing about going back of communication and working with your partners outside of the city, and we've got tribal government that's outside of the cities, and we help go to them for roads repair, and a lot of our citizens that are tribal members to other tribes, and to gain a strong partnership with our tribal leaders around our area. This is a very rich, like I keep saying, a very rich town, and we can be a rich town if we all work together in the infrastructure and all the things that need to be taken care of within our city limits and in our outside city limits. Went to the meeting last night and was educated quite a bit about what goes on with our safety, our safety area where our police and our firemen. So it's all going to be gained of a partnership. So that's
Okay.
how that I would see in the funding wise.
That's great. Thank you all for those fine answers. And we're going to move on to opportunities. Please discuss for us what you feel are two great opportunities for our community in which you have a proposed plan to bring each to fruition. Please back up your individual plans with verifiable facts which you feel support the plan and may be carried out to full achievement. And it is Alan's turn to go first.
Great. Opportunities. Shawnee has so many opportunities. We've lost so many businesses, like your opening statement with your opening question, the vendor downtown. We've lost vendors out at the airport. Scissortail Skydive, they left. I know they weren't bringing in a ton of money, but it was a destination point for the city. We became a destination for skydive because we had a lot of days where they could skydive. We've seen them late into November and early in January. Mm-hmm. So we need to be able to partnership with companies to bring in businesses. No small business is bad business. Every business that can be brought in helps out our economy. Partnering with our local tribes. First of all, I'm not Absentee Shawnee. I'm not CPN. I'm not Sac and Fox. I don't really have or Seminole or anything or Kickapoo. I am a member of the Oglala Sioux tribe that is from Pine Ridge, South Dakota. So when I say partner with tribes, I'm not saying that to better a relationship that I would be bringing in to the tribes. I think that the city has a pretty good relationship right now with the Citizen Potawatomis, the Sac and Fox, the Seminole. I know that the police department partners with them quite a bit. They're cross-deputed on tribal land and on city property. Uh, you know, private industries, airport. The airport is a huge thing. You know, we had an opportunity to have an $11 million complex built out there on a private business's own expense, and they wasn't asking for incentives, or he wasn't asking for breaks or anything like that. He was just asking for a good, solid lease. Um, Without going into too much details on that, there are opportunities that we're missing. We're trying to alienate people that we don't like or business that we don't think fit. You look at Gordon Cooper Technology Center; they have a aircraft mechanics maintenance shop class right there on airport property. Why can't we use those skilled laborers to help build Shawnee as a place to go? Uh, One of the things I was talking to a friend of mine who is a mechanic at Tinker, he said, you know, why Oklahoma is such a great place to be is because you have air carriers on the East Coast and the West Coast that don't want to fly their planes hundreds of thousands or thousands of miles to another destination where they can fly them half the distance, get the plane repaired, and fly it back to their destination. I think that those businesses are great. Um, the housing situation, I think that we talked about using the Cinderella at one time. We talked about using Franklin School at one time for affordable housing or for the homeless housing or whatever. But when I talk to business owners and homeowners in those areas, they're saying the same thing that the people on Main Street are saying. Um, that's a whole different problem. You know, I've talked to one business owner on Kickapoo Spur that said when they first started talking about turning Cinderella into a homeless shelter, she said, we're going to close our business. We'll move to another town. And it's like, we can't lose businesses for just to make somebody feel good. So I might be rambling. I'm sorry. So
You're listing a lot of opportunities. So that's the
yes.
question, and that was the idea behind it. Next up would be Edwina to talk about two opportunities that you feel are ripe, and how would you bring them to fruition, Edwina?
I would say that some of the things that maybe we could look at is maybe solar and hydrogen, water, and infrastructure grants that look into different sources of energy productions that can help our community and to cut costs and existing energy demands.
Mm-hmm.
That would be something that we could be looking at into our VOTEX. You know, we're using our technology centers for a lot of the training and to, the federal government has contracts that are available for new businesses,
Mm-hmm.
for new inventions, and with this climate change coming in, we need to be more up to date on what is expected in years to come, and be ready and for some of the things that we could bring into our city, and that's would be good training for our kids. We got the STEM program that we have in the school system, and all of our kids, our youth is very excelling. They're excelling in all of that, and they're very, very educated on the robotics and and all of that aircraft, and so I
Mm-hmm.
think that that would be a great opportunities for the city to look into and to look into bringing those new um, new ideas into our area.
Okay.
So I'm all about working with the youth and finding a new pathway for our kids and for our adults too.
Very good. Very good. How about you, Lauren Richter? Opportunities for our community, maybe two of them, and how would we bring them to fruition?
This one was the hardest question for me, because I wanted to I want to come in with plans, but I also don't want to be so planned ready that I'm not open for other people's ideas or plans that could be complementing of what I have or even better than what I have. I'm kind of taking this question from an educator standpoint. And one of, I guess, if you will even call it a plan, is to inform the people of Shawnee. I don't think anybody or too many people would disagree with me. I think the city does kind of a poor job with messaging and getting information out there. I feel like whether you're young or old, you want to know things and you want to be able to find them easily. As a teacher, that's all I think about is how I can find the information, where it's at, how easy was it, and how can I assimilate that with what I already know. I don't think I've ever had a person tell me that they want to know less when it comes to certain things that are important to them. And I feel like knowing how the city works, how it's run, the different departments, I was kind of self-ashamed because I didn't know a lot of about the budget, how it worked. I was there at the commission meeting last night and was there a month ago during the original proposal, and I learned so much, and I feel like I should have already known those things as an educator, just someone who likes to know things. I guess if I had to have a plan, it would be to work with the city, work with other commissioners in getting information out there and making it easily accessible. I do my due diligence, and so if it's hard for me, it's going to be harder for people who don't have internet access all the time or don't have the perseverance. I guess I'll keep going into a rabbit hole if I can of finding out knowledge and learning information. I think that's pretty much my only real plan at the moment, because I want to stay open for what people in my ward have and what other people in the other wards have to offer that I haven't considered or that have more experience and intelligence about than I do.
All right. Thank you very much. Educating the populace is very important. Well said by all. I've heard that said many times tonight. So this is a moment in which I like to take to say, okay, guys, is there anything that you heard from one of the other candidates that you would like to ask me about, or you would like to make a point to? Any kind of rebuttal or just something you have a question about? Okay, that moves us to closing remarks. You do? Did I see someone? No? Okay, that moves us to closing remarks. Keep these, please, to about 60 seconds, if you would. And we will start with Edwina Butler Wolfe.
My closing remarks is that our community faces homeless in our downtown area, and I'm happy to hear that last night at the meeting that there is an MOU that is out there for the commission for the Shawnee Rescue Mission. So and one of my plan for to help with the issue with homelessness is maybe looking at working with this mission is to work with maybe looking at tiny homes for just to temporary for our homeless to get them back on the road of working and to help them become more better back sufficient as a citizen, and because most of these homeless people, they're probably just maybe going through some rough times. Of this is a hard area now with the pandemic that settled in, and then and now the economy is not doing very well, and it's a struggle for them. And I think that with most of that's what I would like to do, and finding some ways to helping our people.
Okay. And next up for closing remarks will be Lauren Richter.
Closing remarks, I would say just to, as a registered voter, if you're in this area, to keep up to date on what's going on in town outside of the election cycle. It's been eye-opening for me how much information I've learned in my endeavors, something I would have done outside of an election given the time, but have definitely made it an expedited process for making sure that I feel like I'm even qualified to be an elected official. Elections on June 28th. So be in town for that, please. And I appreciate anybody who's willing to support me, to learn from me, but also to teach me as well. I feel like I'm a pretty approachable person. So Anything that I've said, if anyone wants to offer up more or clarification or guided direction, I'm happy to take on in any capacity. I think a lot of people are going to have a hard time with the three of us deciding between the three of us because, at least from my opinion, we seem to agree or have the same mindsets on a lot of big questions like you had. And from an outside perspective that I don't have, I feel like it would be tough to be able to vote between three people that we have main differences, but we all kind of have the same mindset on a lot of things with a few exceptions.
Okay.
But we're all looking for the same thing in Shawnee, and that's growth and thriving.
Very good. Thank you very much, Lauren Richter. Next up and finally will be Alan Rogers. Alan, your closing comments.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you, Daniel. You're doing a wonderful job. I think getting the forums out there for the people that need to be educated on who's going to be running and what their stances are is paramount. Thank you very much for doing that. My closing statement is I have a desire to serve. I have served with my church. I've served with the Boy Scouts. I've served in nonprofits, for-profits. I've worked in managerial positions with the state, within the federal government. And I have my job right now. I have the largest single budget that I manage. And I come under budget every year. I'm very physically responsible for what I have. I think that looking for different ways to fund is great, but I also think that we need to be careful about how we're looking and what we're looking at. I don't want a string attached that ties us into spending money that we borrowed or was given to us without any opportunity to be able to take care of it. One of the things I hate, and I don't like using the word, but I do hate the term Shompton. That started right after the movie Compton, and they thought it was cool in Shawnee High School, so they made their first float Shompton. And to me, that's a very disparaging remark because Shawnee is not Compton, California. Some people say, well, have you been downtown? And it's like, well, yes, I have. I frequent businesses down there. And, I'm not going to throw out props to anybody because there's several that I don't go to. But there are vast opportunities for growth in Shawnee. And I don't want to be one of the people that makes a promise that I can't keep. So what I will say is that whoever else is elected, and I'm not talking about just Ward 6, I'm talking about Ward 1, 2, and 5, whoever else is elected, whether it's incumbents or new candidates, I promise you, I will work with them to make Shawnee a better place. Just like Lauren said, vote June 28th. I think the deadline is coming up this week for absentee ballots. You can also go in and vote early. So go in, vote, and pick your best candidate.
Thank you very much, Alan. And thank you all for being with us tonight. I know that just stepping into the ring takes a lot of guts, and I admire each of you for doing it. And to our whole audience, June 28th, that's a big day. Usually about 1 out of 10 residents will make a decision like this that sets the future and puts people in places to be able to make decisions for all of us. Our goal is a 20% turnout. Let's get out to the polls on June 28th. You will vote for every single ward, no matter what ward you live in. So if you don't vote, people from other places in the community are going to be making decisions for you. Let's get out and vote on June 28th. Thanks again to Edwina Butler Wolfe, to Lauren Richter, and Alan Rogers. Those are our community's candidates for Ward 6. Thank you, and remember, Shawnee, together we build community one season at a time. Good night, everybody.